We are looking at artwork by folk artist Karla Gerard, and you'll learn in this video how to make an artwork that's inspired by hers, step by step. Look at this artwork by Karla Gerard. You might notice that there are a lot of bright colors and shapes, patterns. Nothing is truly realistic. The houses look a little bit wonky. The angles are off. The plants have strange concentric circles on them. And nothing's quite real, but it's also what makes it really interesting. This is another artwork by Karla Gerard. Notice all of the bright colors and the different patterns that are in the ground. The tree is a lot different than the trees and plants in the other ones, a lot more swirly, but still again those circles. This artwork is different than the first two because there's almost no trees in it, and it's pretty much just houses. It looks like a cityscape. This is something that we could try to do as well. Here's a nighttime landscape by Karla Gerard. Just another example of all of her different patterns, shapes, and colors. So now that we've looked at a bunch of different artworks, let's make one of our own. Are you ready? To start your Karla Gerard artwork, you're going to use a pencil. You'll draw out the lines on the ground. You can draw out houses, trees. Looks like there's a barn in mine. You can make your trees a lot different than mine. You don't have to copy. And now you're noticing that there is really dark, thick black lines coming in. That is supposed to be kind of like when you use your thick Sharpie markers to trace over your lines. Your goal is to cover up all of the pencil lines. Finally, you are going to use a skinny Sharpie to put in the patterns in the ground. You can watch all these be put in, and then you're also going to notice that I'll put some in the house. I don't decide to put the patterns everywhere because it's a little bit too much if you do, but think about where you want to put them. Make them different. I didn't put the same pattern next to each other every time, and I tried to make them look interesting. You can use the sheets that are at your table that have different pattern examples on them, or you can just totally make up your own shapes. Either way, it is fine. Be creative and have fun with this part. Don't draw this in pencil first. It's not worth it. It will take forever to trace over. This is what your first step will look like. Actual pencil on paper. This is a picture of the second and third steps. You notice the big thick Sharpie outlines that are in blue and the skinny Sharpie outlines that are in black, that are the patterns in the grass. In this picture, you're seeing the next two steps of the artwork. First, I used crayon to color in just part of the patterns, not all of them, just little parts. For example, look at the little green dots that are in the grass or the big blue zigzag stripes. I left spaces in between because during the last step, you're going to use watercolor to fill in the white spaces. It's kind of like magic because it saves you time. Then you don't have to spend your whole time coloring everything in crayon. This is the last step. I'm adding a really, really watery watercolor wash on top of the crayon. You're going to notice that the watercolor just kind of comes right off of the crayon. The crayon's pushing it away. If you happen to put too much watercolor, you'll notice the one dot, two of the dots are kind of covered up. Dry your brush off a little bit and use the brush to take the extra water off of the dots. You're going to see my brush do that right now. And it's like magic. And then you can just move on and go to your next space. Skip around on your paper and make sure that you don't put two wet colors next to each other because watercolors will blend together if they're next to each other and they're wet. The green is already dry, and that's why I've chosen to paint this spot in red. In this picture, I've painted everything except for the sky. And you can see that some parts of it are a little bit wet, especially in the tree, and maybe you can tell in the house a little bit that it's wet. I have to wait until that's dried a little bit better before I can paint the sky. Yay, I painted my sky and now I'm all done. So I just carry my wet painting over to the drying rack and then you can work on your next project. The end. Bravo!